I was glad to have the opportunity to go visit with the largest insurance market from the reinsurance perspective in the world. Lloyd's of London is 300 years old, has been forever vital to our ability to insure our coastal exposure by reinsuring that risk, not just to Shreveport. There's not enough capacity up there to effectively spread that coastal exposure, but indeed through the international reinsurance market around the entire world, spreading it all around the world, just as wildfires in California are, floods in Germany are, and wildfires in Australia. Reinsurance pays for the bulk of those losses after every significant event. So with this opportunity, I visited with Lloyd's first, and their executive counsel, their general counsel, provided the leadership of Lloyd's to myself and the two lawyers I had accompany me. A local lawyer, Ronnie Johnson with the McGlinchey firm, represents and has for years Lloyd's USA for our purposes and other states, and a local lawyer out of St. Tammany Parish, Matt Munson, who could articulate the difference between our market and its natural catastrophe crisis, hurricane events, and the Florida market, which is actually in a greater crisis than we are, but a man-made one through actions by the legislature and inactions by the legislature to fix the crisis in their state. I wanted to emphasize that we're not Florida. We don't have the same crisis that they do. Ours is different. It's natural, and we've been there before, know how to fix it, and we're about doing that. And we're not headed down the road that Florida has taken. That was articulated well by the two lawyers with me, and we met thereafter with the IUA, the International Underwriters Association. It's the half of the reinsurance market in London that's not part of Lloyd's. Had a great meeting with their leadership, and then the third meeting was with a major broker, one of the largest in the world, called Aon Reinsurance Broker. And they brought a half dozen of their leading syndicates, as it's called, groups of investors who buy and invest in reinsurance around the world, to hear our story and to share with us the status of the market in London at this point.
What kind of response did you get?
Very positive, very positive. I was told, look, Louisiana, we have a long and deep relationship with. All three of those meetings said the same thing. Our challenge is not your hurricane exposure. We know that. We've done that. We are committed to Louisiana. Our challenge is globally, and that is capacity. Because of the last several years and the catastrophes around the world, an unheard of land hurricane through the Midwest called a derecho cost insurers $9 billion. That's Laura equivalent. And add to that wildfires in California, floods that are privately insured in Germany, wildfires of a larger nature, more expensive than California in Australia. All of it combining with our coastal hurricane events have been challenges for the reinsurance market that has dried up some of the appetite for that investment opportunity. So capacity is the challenge for us. It's not our exposure to hurricanes. It's whether the global reinsurance market will provide enough coverage to do what they did for us the last couple of years and did for the rest of states with catastrophic exposure, like California, like Florida, like Texas.
Now, what is the outlook going forward?
It's uncertain. The commitment is there, and I think our visit reinforced that. I made the point that we're the sixth largest state premium paying state in America for Lloyd's of London, which they were aware of, and pointed out to me, in their world, we're the equivalent of Germany and France in premium that they provide for coverage in those economies, and as they do for us here in Louisiana. So the commitment is there. but the capacity is the challenge for us and for those other areas of the world that are in need of their coverage.
Do you think this trip will encourage other insurance companies to look at doing business in Louisiana? I
do, because the trade journals, the insurance trade journals, when I landed in London, the first thing I did, went down to the lobby in the hotel I was staying in and did an interview with SP Global, a major reinsurance periodical, daily publication, and then Insurance Insider, a publication over there that's widely read, I was told by those I visited with and met with, by the market in London. They reported on my being there and the message we brought to the market on behalf of our Louisiana insurance companies.
What message do you have for homeowners in Louisiana as we move into a new year?
Well, I am very optimistic that we're going to have bipartisan support for the insurance incentive program that we created legislatively in the last session, but need to get funds transferred from elsewhere in the budget with an anticipated surplus available to replicate the incentive program we did after Katrina and Rita that was highly successful in depopulating the bloated citizens back then, back from 173,000 policies after Katrina and Rita down to 35,000 policies when Laura hit. We're back to 123,000 20,000 policies now, and we think with that incentive program working as well as it did the last time. Now that's conditioned on these smaller companies being able to access reinsurance primarily from London and Bermuda, where I'm headed later this month, the second largest reinsurance market in the world, to tell our story again, to motivate them, to interest them, to help us in depopulating citizens and attracting, as we did after Katrina and Rita, other companies to our market to replace those who may have gone under, failed, or withdrawn from writing in our state because of the losses of the past two hurricane seasons.
What will your message be to the legislature next year?
That we have challenges, it is a crisis, that we need to do the short-term fix, fund the incentive program, and the long-term fix at the same time, which is to better solidify, fortify our homes and businesses for hurricane events by building to a higher standard. It's called Fortify Homes in our state, copied from Alabama, where it's been very successful, though they have only 2-county coastal exposure. That program has spread up to Montgomery and Birmingham in central Alabama. We're anticipating an upgrade January 1 in our state building code, statewide building code, that brings the standard for all new construction in residential areas almost up to the equivalent of Fortify. Fortify is better. It's a little more expensive. We're going to fund, hopefully, with the legislature's support, grant programs to help folks retrofit existing residences to that higher standard to enable us to survive 150-mile-an-hour winds as we experienced in Port Fourchon and Lake Charles the last 2 years.
What are the elements of that of those higher building codes?
Well, for example, it requires, instead of just nail guns to put tiles and metal roofing on top of a building, it requires screws or the equivalent there too. In addition to that, under that top layer of metal roof or tiles, asbestos tiles on the roof, it requires a secondary barrier of, think duct tape, for the seams between sheets of plywood, so that if the top layer comes off, if the shingles blow off or the metal covering blows off, that duct tape, if you will, covering over the seams between the plywood will keep the interior from getting wet. If you can keep the roof on and not let the water penetrate into the building, the loss is minimum and very manageable for the property owner and for their insurer.
In conclusion, what would you like people to keep in mind as we move into 2023?
That we've been through this before. We are the target, the prime target for hurricanes entering the Gulf of Mexico, have been that for 100 years. But we can manage that. We can build higher, we can build stronger, and we can therefore attract flood insurance, perhaps from the private sector, if the National Flood Insurance Program becomes prohibitively expensive, and from property insurers, the private sector. We can do this and manage this, but it will take a bit of effort and a little more focus on and emphasis on building higher and stronger to withstand these hurricane events.
How can people get more information?
By contacting us. We have consumer assistance folks at the ready to share any of this information and other information that would help in shopping for appropriate and affordable coverage by contacting us at 800-259-5300 or go to our website, ldi.la.gov, 800-259-5300. This information is all there with other helpful tips as well.